Well, Zach, that does raise the question. There are apparently some prisoners in Guantanamo that the administration claims, or some of our national security organizations claim, continue to be people that pose a security threat to the United States, but for whom there is not enough evidence to bring charges in a normal trial. What do you suggest be done with those inmates?
I think the American system, the way we work, is that if you have evidence to prove somebody has committed a crime, you put them on trial, you show the world the evidence, and then you punish them if they're guilty. As someone who's represented Guantanamo prisoners, I've been able to see the government's evidence against dozens of the men, the classified evidence that they claim to have against the men. And it's been shocking to me. In fact, I didn't expect it when I first started doing this work at all, just how shoddy that evidence often is. It falls apart when you start to actually examine it. Now, of course, that's not true for everyone, but for a shocking number of men in Guantanamo, it is, in fact, the case. And so the United States government now is saying, listen, just trust us. We can't prove these men are dangerous. We can't prove they've committed a crime, but we think they should be held for the rest of their lives, potentially. Now, to me, that's just un-American. It's not the way we operate. And when push comes to shove, they usually can't prove dangerousness. That's a really scary concept. I think it should be for all of us.
We're talking with Zachary Katz-Nelson. He's a senior staff attorney for the American Civil Liberties Union National Security Division. He has represented and defended inmates at Guantanamo Prison. And we're talking with Zach about the ongoing hunger strike of over 100 prisoners in Guantanamo Bay who believe that they will remain there for life. Many of them are innocent, have been cleared by the United States security institutions for not posing any threat to the United States. And Zach, I have to ask you, as someone who has represented Guantanamo Bay inmates, we learned recently that another lawyer, Andy Hart, age 38, he's a federal public defender from Toledo, Ohio, who was representing Guantanamo Bay inmates, recently committed suicide and left a suicide note and a thumb drive that people believe to contain his case files. What do you make of that development? Has the pressure of defending these inmates and the understanding that they are being deprived of the rights that the United States normally accords to its citizens, has that pressure led some people to crack?
My understanding from people that worked with Andy is that his decision to take his life had nothing to do with Guantanamo, and it was personal issues that he was dealing with, and so I don't think it had any impact on his decision to end his life.
Well, I want to broaden this picture out for just a second, because I think that given how long we have been imprisoning people without charges in Guantanamo Bay, some Americans forget exactly what has been done there and some of the criminal behavior that has emerged that the United States government was engaged in there. For instance, there is evidence that the United States government was involved in drugging prisoners and using that as a method of torture, using antipsychotic drugs to drug them, in fact. Many people have sustained severe injuries, including some people believe death. And you can confirm or correct me if I'm wrong. Many prisoners have died under interrogation there, the conditions there, the things that and it is believed that more than 50% of these people were in the wrong place at the wrong time, at the very least.
Well, I would say so. There've been 9 men who've died in Guantanamo since it opened. None of them have been their deaths are directly related to interrogation practices. In U.S. custody more generally, and people who are accused of terrorism, though, there have been dozens of people who've died, and upwards of 30 people who've had their deaths labeled as homicides directly as a result of their interrogations. Now, that's not specific to Guantanamo, but to the U.S. military and to U.S. military contractors and to CIA agents as a whole in their interrogation practices. So I think there are many people who have much to answer for. And in Guantanamo itself, the conditions over time have been brutal, absolutely brutal. In the name of trying to get information from these men, pretty much anything you can imagine has been done to them. The United States has definitely crossed a line at times into torture. They've routinely abused people. And to this day, the force-feeding methods that they're using in Guantanamo, where they restrain someone physically to a chair, strap them down, their arms, their legs, their body, their head, shove a tube up their nostrils, snake it down their throat into their stomach, and start pumping food into them. That, by all independent experts, by under international law, under the American Medical Association's view, that is cruel and unusual, and in fact verges on torture, if not in fact being torture. And so the abuse continues to this day, unfortunately.